Alright, guys, can I get your attention? Okay, so we're about to start the event. Okay, so this is the 11th Croydon event. I don't know why I'm still counting, it's probably irrelevant now, but yeah, it's an event focused on bringing kind of developers around Croydon together to communicate, to have beer and pizza together, and to learn stuff. And I'm going to go through a few other tech events around Croydon. So the first one being one over here, which is an innovation meetup on the 20th of July, and it's to do with how to win business in the public sector. So yeah, if you're around, you can come to this event. I don't know, do you know what time it's happening?
It's lunchtime, so it's 1 till 2.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from one of our companies, one of our members who are scraping data and helping suppliers realise when there's opportunities for them.
Cool. And the other tech event happening this month is the big one, which is Croydon Tech City, which happens once a month at different venues. This time happening on 7 PM on 21st of July. I'm not sure the venue, but it's on the website, so if you go to croydontechcity.com, hit events, it will be there and you can attend it. It's quite popular, it's mainly business focused, but anyone there can attend, so feel free to go to it.
And it's basically, so we've got a 2-month recess, we have to run this summer, so this is the last one before the summer break.
Oh, so they're going to break for...
We're going to break, so we're going to have like a recap of the whole year's events, but also I think there's new season. There's like a really new session.
Cool. Alright, so why are you here? So now I'm going to go through the room and one by one I'm going to say why you're here. Basically what you do and why you're here. So I'm going to start with this end. The guy in the blue t-shirt. You don't have to stand, you can just take on the new one. Yeah.
I'm a student, just graduated.
Okay.
So I'm here to learn about what's happening in Croydon in terms of tech.
Okay. Cool.
Hi, I'm Nigel from SME Needs. I'm here because Jimmy keeps trying to get me to pay up, put money into the pizza and beer pot. But just understand more about the sort of digital community around here. I help small tech firms with their marketing.
Hi there, I'm Mike. I run a company called Skillside. We do project management for SMEs and startups, mainly around digital delivery. So that is often web development. So I work with a lot of graduates and undergraduates like John, and we manage them as a team to deliver digital projects.
Hi, I'm David from QDOS Computer Consultants in Purley. We look after small businesses' IT needs. I'm responsible for websites and web apps. I use Drupal.
I'm Mark, I'm a former developer. I'm also a teacher assistant at local primary school, and I'm a volunteer for something called Code Club, which is an after-school programming partner for nice learners.
Stephen.
Yes, hi. My name is Mazda, and I'm here today to find how it's possible to get help and assistance from some of the people in here to develop a trading solution.
My name's Danny. I work in the city for a FTSE 100 company. I'm an accountant and I'm also a coder, developer, have been for like 30 years. I'm actually 66 and I'm sort of thinking of retiring and want to move into my next career, if you can call it that, which is I started doing some app development on the iPhone. It's a sort of geeky, technical career sort of thing. So I find like-minded people. Yeah.
I'm Peter. I look after people's networking and computer support needs for small local companies. I originally got into coding when it was called programming back in the late 60s. So, and I can remember when you could actually see the transistors inside the computers.
I'm Matt. I recently got into the tech industry as a job after making a complete change from working in sports for 14 years, so a bit of a change in career. And currently I'm a front-end developer for RBI, Root Business Information. But my ambition, my goal is to get into back-end development, particularly things like Node.js and mean stack, which is what I'm learning at the moment.
I'm Simon. I'm a designer / front-end developer. I live and work in Croydon.
I'm Fahad. I'm a Java developer. I've been for 10 years. I live down the road, so I've got to see what's happening. Otherwise, you'll be able to see me.
My name is Leon Davis. I work on the floor downstairs, 6th floor. I work in here. We've got a company called Level Up. We're a software delivery company. We write software or help other people become better at delivering software. And the reason I've come today is because I've come to tell you about an open source API we've been writing.
I'm Kashim. I'm a recent graduate, and I'm also a graphic designer for a small football club.
I'm Jason. Straight out of college into an apprenticeship. I used to work in this building. Quid Cycle, if anyone remembers, or you might remember. Just doing mostly project management at the moment, but also some back-end coding as well for my company.
I'm Serena. I'm a tech person. I've got a publishing background, but I do kind of like writing proof of text things. But I've also been helping Richard a lot last year, so but I'm like today. I mean, I'm really kind of here to network with people because sometimes tech stuff is actually goes over my head, so I don't always turn up just for this tools.
I'm Saffron. I'm the community manager here at Sussex Innovation Centre. I'm here because I'm here most days. I live here almost. So yeah, just here. Sussex Innovation came to Croydon back in October last year. We are working with companies who are doing something slightly different in any sector, innovating and creating jobs, hence being paid for by the university. If you're interested in any more, then speak to me afterwards.
Hey, I'm Chris. I'm a C++ software engineer, and I'm beginning my own company.
I'm Aaron. I'm here to speak to you today. I'm a mixture of developer and designer.
And any backgrounds?
I'm Jimmy. I am a professor geek, and I've spent most of my life building projects that will probably never ever make money, but I enjoy it thoroughly. And one day I hope that you guys can use some of it.
Thank you. And going back to me, so I'm Richard. I'm a front-end developer at a company in London called Charterjet, and I organise this event with someone else who isn't doing it currently, but so yeah, I do this and work, and I want to meet people like you guys. That's why we put it together. So that's pretty much it. So we have two great speakers today, Aaron and Leon, and the way it goes is usually we have a speaker, and then we have a break, and another speaker, and then a break, and then we have 3 speakers, another speaker, and then we end it. But it's 2, so it'll be speaker, break, speaker, and then end. So without further ado, I'm going to call Aaron to come and set up.
So, as I said briefly before, I'm Aaron. I've been working in the tech industry for just over a decade now, so not quite as long as some of you here. I've been a mixture of developer, designer, user experience designer, and a few other random roles thrown in there as well. Throughout the career, I've mainly worked on web, but I've also had time working on mobile apps and physical interfaces for everything from sat-nav units to treadmills and one oil well. So a lot of the stuff I've done has been touch-based. It's something I kind of care quite a bit about because of reasons of injuries and such. I'll go into more of that now. First thing I need to talk about when you're designing for a touchscreen or touch devices, you'll have to make compromises. There's no there's no perfect way of doing it. There'll always be issues. It's the same with most design, but even more so when you start going onto devices that people are physically interacting with. So before you've even thought about kind of business needs or technical requirements, you'll have to be kind of making choices between usable, aesthetic, and accessible. You want as much as all is possible, but to be perfect on one, you'll end up making sacrifices on the other. So you've got to try and find a sweet spot in the middle, but there is no one perfect way. So later on, I'll be talking about some examples, some things that you can do, but any solution has to be right for your problem. Now, when it comes to talking about touchscreen, this generally is going to be mobile. Mobile devices, phones, tablets, etc. The only kind of real exception to that is things like kiosks, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But outside of designing for kiosks, context is really, really difficult. You don't know if somebody using your application or website is going to be walking down the street, or at home, or at work. If somebody's walking down the street with their phone, they're holding it in their hand, they're going to be holding it tighter. As you walk, rather than kind of gripping, holding it loosely, you hold it tighter, which brings your thumb further over the device. Now this reduces the reach in the close-in area, increases the reach further out. Also means somebody's only going to have the one digit to use your application with. So suddenly kind of how people interact with it is going to be different. Also, some consider it's not technically touch-based, but again, in all these situations, they might be on, on the public transport or somewhere else with a flaky internet connection. So things are going to be loading slowly. People are going to be less happy about mistakes. So if you accidentally click somewhere, you have to wait for that to load, wait to go back. that's going to be an unpleasant experience. So you want to help people kind of navigate through your application or site as best as possible. Now, also, another context. People could be eating pizza. Usually at this point, it's what they've already got pizza. But we'll get that later. But you know, a lot of you will have the time where you've been eating pizza or maybe some fried chicken, and you're trying to check Facebook on your phone at the same time. You're just using your little fingers to scroll through. I can see a few faces which know exactly what I'm talking about right now. And that might seem like a real edge case, but there's so many kind of similar cases that will push people into this. You try doing something like a pinch to zoom with just your little fingers or just your index finger and your middle finger. It's very, very difficult. If you don't have the digits that you're used to using, that people are expected to use for the device. Another context, it could be winter, it's cold, it's miserable, you're walking down the street, you've got gloves on, and you don't want to take your gloves off to use your phone. So you're sitting there trying to like answer a call with your nose or your tongue. You know, don't assume that people have, you know, all the digits available, even if they, you know, they're perfectly fit and healthy. Or you know, the context could be completely different. You could have somebody's complete and utter attention for long periods of time. People like to say, oh, they're on the mobile, so you've only got people's attention spans for brief periods of time. Actually, you can have their attention for ages. So it really depends. There's no certainties when you're designing for small devices like this, and you know, even more so, and just as much kind of tablet devices, though that's used a little less on the move, but still a lot of the same stuff applies. Now it might feel like a lot of these are edge cases that, you know, they're only going to apply to some people some of the time, but talking about, say, you know, not having all your fingers available because you've been eating greasy food. Well, some people just don't have all their fingers or don't have all their fingers functional. Or walking down the street, you know, what also affects, apart from the number of digits available to use the device, it affects motor control because you're walking along, you might be, you know, you're trying to focus on other things, you're trying to just balance as you walk. Some people don't have full, you know, have all the fingers but don't have full motor control. So again, you know, each of these edge cases match up to something in day-to-day life. Somebody could just be busy, you know, think of a parent with a child and a pram and walking a dog, and they're trying to use your app at the same time. They haven't, you know, got the focus to use it. But in other contexts, at home, they might have plenty. So it also depends, what is your app being used for? You know, are you building a mapping app? Then don't try and put in loads of complex gestures because people are going to be likely using it on the street. But other apps, maybe these people are a bit more stationary. Now, predominantly for the rest of this talk, I'm going to be talking about fingers. But first of all, let's talk about eyes. Now, designing for touchscreen, that kind of a phrase is a bit misleading because we think, oh, screens, so people look at screens. But actually, these kinds of devices, there's one group that I'm really, really popular with, and that's people with visual impairment. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One, most people who are blind, or you know, registered blind, aren't completely blind, they have some level of vision. So the ability to easily zoom in, whether that be through a pinch or a tap or a double tap gesture, is great for them. It's going to actually be a lot harder to navigate on certain you know, desktop environments. But also, lots of mobile devices come built in with really good assistive technology. So whatever you're designing and building, try and do your best to make sure it actually works on top of that assistive tech. Make sure they can still use it. You know, if your gestures are, you know, if you're making use of gestures or you've got navigation that's hidden away, you know, basically make sure screen readers can see that stuff. Because then your blind users can see it, because it's not a case of, oh, you're designing for a screen, therefore you're designing for mobile people. You're designing for a screen that actually has more people with vision impairment using it than that you normally would just on a desktop environment. So it becomes really important. Now, let's talk about hands. They're great, lovely, wonderful things. We use them a lot. We don't necessarily know that, you know, think that much about them. So first of all, we're going to talk about fingers. fingers are great. They're dexterous. They're very, very fast, nimble. Do quick, precise motions. Now, based on how the metatarsals are in this part of the hand, it means the fingers are very good at an up-down motion. They're not so great at side to side, but just flick up and down, then kind of wiggle side to side. You'll notice you haven't got the speed side to side. You haven't got quite the same accuracy either. So if you're designing your interface and thinking, hey, people are going to be using their fingers for this, maybe you're doing something large, multi-touch on a tablet, think about that. Think, if someone wants to jump between multiple bits of navigation, they're going to be pressing a button here, then pressing a button somewhere else. Up, down, easy. Left to right, not so easy. You're going to have to start actually not just moving the finger a bit, but probably moving the wrist, moving the arm. It's actually, it's more work to the user. But then we've got the thumbs. Thumbs are also great. Because how the metatarsals aren't quite as connected to the rest of the hand here, thumbs are really good at side to side, essentially, swiping left and swiping right. But again, though, they're not so great at the up and down. But the big downside of thumbs is they're clunky. You've got a big touch area. So if you're expecting your buttons to be pressed by thumbs a lot, such as an application somebody's going to use as they're walking down the street, then your buttons need to be bigger than this. They need to be this size. Not the full thumb, but the thumb pad. Now, if you're thinking about gestures, if you're pressing down for something like a long haul or for a swipe, that pad of the finger or the thumb becomes enlarged, it gets squashed down to the screen. So at which point, the thumb particularly, that becomes an even bigger area. So if you're thinking of areas that you want somebody to be swiping with their thumb, those need to be big touch areas. Arms. As I said, most of the stuff is applicable for designing for smaller touchscreens, but if you're designing for kiosks, like one of the ones that I've been seeing a lot more recently, which I'm sure some of you will come into contact with, McDonald's start putting kiosks in everywhere. It's great, and they're pretty good by and large. Just saying to Rich before, I really go and get some nice imagery of their kiosks. And they're pretty well designed, except for one kind of thing. They're error states. If you accidentally add an extra item and you want to go around and remove that item, now it's error states is something that plenty of people we screw up with designing. I'm not having a big gun, but the button to remove is up here. Now, if you have problems with your shoulder, like I do, and that just hurt a bit, or you're short, that's a problem. Now, short arms, it can move them quite freely in a lot of directions. Side to side like this, easy, it's not a lot of effort, but moving up and down, or moving up, if you're doing it a lot, for a user who's going to be, say, setting your application for, say, 10 minutes, half an hour longer, that's going to become load. If you've got somebody keeping their hands out because they're doing gestures on the screen, if you've ever seen something like Minority Report, that's a terrible interface. It looks lovely, but it's terrible. If you've got your arms out like this for any length of time, they start feeling heavy. They start kind of being dragged down. It's in fact called static loading, or colloquial gorilla arm. Basically, if you're doing something for a big touchscreen, you don't want people having their hands on for any long extended periods of time. It just doesn't work. But also, you don't want people reaching up high. Reaching down kind of low, that's not generally a huge issue. From side to side's fine. Now I'll go on to talking a bit more generically. Targets. That's the thing. It's like one of the nice things about the McDonald's interface. Most of the time when you're interacting with it, all the buttons are nice. All things that you're going to be clicking are actually nice and quite. You've got the screen this size, but most of the stuff you're actually interacting with is in this area this size. So your arm is just moving like this. It's not moving all around the place, all over the place. You're not having to. There's no fast motions, no jerky motions. It's smooth, it's comfortable. And this applies just as much as if you're designing on a small phone. If you've got a load of buttons, people are likely pressing this and that and this and that again. You don't want to be having people going from the top to the bottom of the screen, up and down all over the place. You want to cluster those relevant bits of interaction together. Now, here's some mobile, some iPhone sizes. 4S, which I have, it's a pretty normal sized phone, but now we're starting to get ones like this. Now, assuming you're right-handed, and assuming you've got relatively normal sized hands, this green area here is the comfortable area to reach. This area here, you're having to stretch your hand to a bit, and these red areas are where it's actually, you can't comfortably get your hand to. You're having to rearrange the device in your hand or use your other hand to touch the screen. This is no longer within the reach of a thumb. I would say that's sort of, average size right-handed person. Now, if you inverse that, someone who's left-handed, that's going to be now the other side, but also if you've got large hands, actually this area becomes harder to reach, this area becomes easier. Small hands, the other way around. So the problem there is you're not really left with many places that are comfortable. In fact, your kind of safe, comfortable space is basically here in the middle, which doesn't really seem like the most sensible place for navigation. As you start looking at the bigger screens, you start seeing just this kind of middle blob at the bottom. It's a big question is, where do you start having people interact? What is your common interactions? Now, there's a kind of a theory around human-computer interaction which dates back many, many, many years, called Fitts law. And basically, it's about kind of the ease to select a target, and target is very much appropriate as this is originally of fighter pilots, based on your kind of starting position. The further away it is to get the ease, you need the size. Now, a big square, moving from there to here, isn't going to make a difference. What you need is the oblong, because you've got that deceleration zone, so you get somewhere, you easily find the target. But when we've been designing for desktops for many, many years, we started putting, you've got lots of interaction in the corners of the screens. Because you throw the mouse to the corner, it stops there. So you can do it really fast, really quickly, and people aren't going to miss. Can't do that with phones, unfortunately. We just hit thin air. So we actually have to have bigger areas. For years we have ways of going, hey, we can make tiny little buttons that still function, and tiny little scroll bars on the side that still function without it, causing problems for the user. Now we kind of need to stop trying to shrink our navigation all the time. So what do we do? Talk through a couple of options. So we've got radial menus. They're great, they're lovely. If you're into gaming, you've probably encountered them. If you're not into console gaming, you might never have seen them before in your life. The idea is they're always in the center of the screen. You start interacting with them, they come up, and your cursor is normally, in the computer would be focused in the middle, but obviously your fingers are essentially naturally focused towards the middle, and all interaction is around it. Now, obviously, putting something like that on a website or most mobile apps isn't necessarily going to fit in particularly well, but there's ways you can develop on this concept. For some applications, maybe this will work well. Now, if you go over here, this is interface on one of the Windows mobile phones, I believe. And they have a semicircle, and as you can see, the interface comes up wherever you kind of choose to open that interface. And so, if you have a left-handed user, nice and easy. Someone with tiny little hands, nice and easy. Right-handed user, slightly larger hands, over there. And you've got all kind of core functionality. And then from one of these, you click an option, it would then take you to the next level of navigation. So it's you have multiple stages of navigation, but it's all compact, it's all it's comfortable, it's easy to reach. But again, if you're designing to sell a website, that again is going to be a bit too unconventional, but could work well for many app developers. Now something a bit more conventional is having slide-in navigation. You slide the content to the side, you get that navigation. Now if you're doing something like this, you'd have two key things to remember. One, try and avoid putting the really important things at the top and bottom, like you normally would, because the top and bottom is actually the hard to reach areas. If it's things that like to be clicked a lot, actually you want them in the middle or kind of the second quartile from the bottom. try and have it accessible from both sides, because there are left-handed people in the world. So a few takeaways. So the UI should be discoverable for assistive tech. Thumbs need bigger touch areas. Gestures need big touch areas. And don't have actions that can only be performed with a gesture. You know, there are, whatever gesture you have, there'll always be people who will struggle with it. Have fallbacks, have other ways of making an interaction. Gestures, you know, gestures within your apps can be great and lovely, but shouldn't be the only way to do something. Corners are hard to reach. Not all the corners, but all corners are hard to reach for somebody. Just each corner depends on the person. Test in different environments. Don't just, if you're designing an application on a mobile phone, don't just sit in your office and press it and play with it. Go for a walk down the street, walk through the park, stand on the bus or the tube, or walk through a dodgy neighbourhood at a time of night when you're clutching your phone very, very tightly. Test in different environments because you use your phone differently in those environments. Test for long periods of time. Just checking functionally does that interaction on your app work? Sure, but checking that actually, if you're building a game, can you sit and play with this game for several hours at a time and your hands stay comfortable? That's important. And test with an odd selection of touch points, because not everyone's using their index finger, not everyone's using their thumb. Some people, will be using their little fingers, whether that be a permanent situation or a temporary situation. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
No questions?
Have you found any sort of innovative web solutions? I can see with Windows Mobile they've got control of the whole platform, don't they? What about innovative web ones?
I'd say so. Seeing things like this becoming, they're not commonplace, but I've seen in quite a few places. Also, again, more so on apps. Like I've seen it on a few websites, but more so on apps. And I've seen something that's kind of like like a quarter radial menu occurring. Again, I'm seeing quite a few apps, but not so. But obviously, doing something like that within a website environment, it's a bit more difficult. Not impossible, but generally kind of a bit too much for small projects to be considering. Yeah, I'd say these are probably kind of like the best options I've seen, but again, it really depends on the situation that you're building for. If you're building a tool for like a mobile tool for people who work on construction sites, your user cases are going to be different. You don't necessarily care about it being as pleasant so much, but you care about it being accurate. You care about it kind of being easy to read. If you're in an environment where there's a lot happening and what's going on, you care about it. That there's a low risk of mistakes. One interface which I did see, which was designed actually with a very specific user group in mind. It was designed for the very elderly, and it was actually kind of a layer on top of Android, but it was, it's something you could translate to the web very, very easily. Was where they basically divided the screen up into a grid of 4. One section of the grid was your content, the other 3 sections were just large buttons. You essentially had a back button, forward button. Basically, you could flow through the site. You flow through the navigation that way. You had very little on the screen. It was very, very simplified. All the touch areas were huge, and because they all kind of essentially came to the middle, they're all within easy reach of each other. That was quite nice. Like I think it was part of a research piece by an agency down in Croydon called Reverb. I don't think it ever kind of brought up the mass market though. But that again, that was quite nice. But that was a very specific user group. It's not something you would want to do for many mass market things, because obviously styling and branding and business needs are also going to come into play, which that doesn't really allow for so well.
It's interesting to about that elderly users on the mobile, because with our projects we've tended to start to really think, okay, design for mobile first, then we picked up a project recently for a funeral directors, and we started to think, well, actually, the likely audience using this, especially where there's been a death in the family, it tends to go to a brother or sister to be responsible for that. We were thinking through, well, is it going to be mobile first? And we've decided actually it's more likely to be laptop, desktop. But I don't know, what do you think?
So I was doing a bit of work with some people at Age Concern a few months back, and they're actually rolling out. They have a program where they used to have kind of little kind of community centre type places. Well, maybe not quite the right word, but places where they meet with the elderly and offer them training in certain more, shall we say, modern skills. And it used to be that they would come in, they would sit at a desktop, they would get taught how to use internet and stuff. But and that was what they've been doing for many, many years. More recently, they've started changing that because actually a lot of the people who are now coming into the age bracket that they're working with have actually got some, basic computer usage, but not necessarily, some far older. But they've got more. As a general habit, they've got more usage of a computer, but not necessarily the comfort. But they've dropped having the desktops in that environment. They've replaced the environment in some of their newer sites, and they basically just have essentially a large living room. It's a load of sofas, a load of iPads, on some Android tablets, but basically those tablet devices, and they sit and teach people, get them comfortable using the tablet environment. Because mobile phones, not so much, but the large tablet environments actually working really well for some of the older age groups, because also you can take things which have been designed for mobile and scale them up to this size, which is particularly good for, if you've got sight issues, but also good for large touch areas as well.
That's another good point, because I was working with a designer who said, actually, we're not going to go fully responsive, we're going to go adaptive, and I want the tablet to have the desktop version rather than the mobile version. I mean, it's horses for courses, I suppose, but
it can vary. Again, it depends on the project, because also, for me, from a technical perspective, thinking about is something like mobile ready. That isn't a case of is it responsive, is there an alternate version of the site. That's it. Does it load fast? Does it load on different devices, like some kind of more basic mobile devices? Does it function well when being used in a touch environment? Those are my key considerations as to something being mobile ready. Because even if you deliver a full desktop size site and you have to pinch and zoom, that's actually quite comfortable for most people, particularly some people prefer it because it also means they're getting an environment they're a little more comfortable with, they've already encountered before, they're not having to relearn it. This is particularly more so for, should we say, less savvy users, the people who are going to be using something like it becomes a more comfortable environment. Pinching and zooming, or tapping and zooming, depending on the OS, is natural and easy enough for most to learn. So how you get your content you design to mobile isn't necessarily the most important thing, but actually how it functions once it's there is probably the more important thing.
Driven by the target.
Yeah.
One of the things about user interfaces affects me, and I mean I've been involved in computers since the late 60s, so all this stuff about older people not understanding this gets up my nose anyway, because I think, well, we invented all this shit. But one of the things that doesn't work well with mobile stuff for me is now I've got to use glasses. I use glasses with transitions lenses, which means when I'm outside, it means I have a real problem with contrast levels. And I think that's, if you're going to do a stuff that's going to get the widest possible range, getting the contrast levels, and ideally, I'm pretty certain most phones have got light sensors in them, adjusting the contrast level to, if you could actually adjust the contrast level to the background level of light, because that causes me serious problems. Sometimes if I'm out in the street and I want to do something, I've got to fish into my bag, pull out my reading glasses, which haven't got the automatic darkening on them, so I can look at the screen and see what the bloody hell I'm doing just to ring someone back, and that really gets up my nose.
So I would say that when it comes to contrast, that's something you should be thinking about for any design. It shouldn't really be just because it's mobile.
I don't think enough care is taken on that, and it means that if you're actually targeting devices that are used in any context,
now,
bright sunlight really causes me a lot of grief.
Yes, but that should be something considered for the design from scratch as opposed to trying to alter it later. Like, yes, some phones do allow you to access a light sensor, which is basically the camera, and then get information. You could change the design based on that, but that would basically rinse your battery of most phones, and your users are going to hate you if you rinse the battery really quickly. And what you're better off doing is actually just designing it so it has good contrast in the first place. And this applies to anything you're designing, whether it be touch or just
I wouldn't disagree with you on that, but it's
the only reason I didn't make the point was most of this was a point of like, this is either very much mobile focus or touch focus. Like contrast, I think, should apply to anything you're designing for any environment, for any user.
But it doesn't cause me a problem on a desktop computer or a laptop.
It does cause other people a problem
on stuff I'm walking down the street on.
That's your individual use case, but contrast does cause plenty of other people a problem who are sat at home on a desktop. If you have certain levels of vision impairment, good contrast, and decent sized text, you're going to be fine. The poor contrast and small font sizes is going to be a problem. Again, that's one problem affecting some people all the time and some people just some of the time. But very much it's not necessarily a mobile problem; it's just a general design problem. It becomes a mobile problem for your edge kind of case, but for many people that's a general desktop and home problem.
The contrast levels on a mobile device are much. The background illumination level tends to be much more variable on a mobile device than it is on a desktop. Normally, I mean, if I've got a desktop and I have a problem with the sunlight, I move it around so it doesn't fit. I can't do that if I'm walking down the street looking at my phone.
Guys, I'm going to have to stop you there.
I think there was one thing.
Okay.
It's just one question. In terms of trying to make this appeal to the widest possible audience by making it different size fingers and no fingers and light and all the rest of it, I suppose my view would be, why would you want to do that? Why wouldn't you say, well, forget about that 20%, don't care about them at the moment. Do something simple that with the 80% could use, see if it's got any traction, first of all, before you go and come up with the best thing since slice spread that nobody wants, yes, and sort of actually try and sort of do the two things in two sort of separate phases, because there's no traction.
One very quick answer. I'm not saying this should necessarily be how you build from scratch, but very much depends on the project. Most of the projects that I'd work on would be something you'd do from scratch, but if you're a startup just trying to get an idea out there and see if it works, then maybe you don't. But also, as I say, it's 20% of people all of the time, and 100% of people some of the time. Because all the kind of situations, just like the food, or you're carrying shopping, or you're in a shady neighbourhood, so you're clutching your phone tight, they apply to all of us some of the time. So it's not really designing for a minority of users, it's designing for all users a minority of the time.
Good round of applause for I'm glad you've noticed pieces here. We're going to have a break for about 10 minutes while Leon sets up, and I'll call you back after that. So, enjoy. Oh yeah. No.
delicious environment. You can't just
Look at it.
The only thing currently, well, it's not years, it's not so it suffers from a lot of the symmetry. So you need to begin with the stuff in the meantime before I can't because you can get kind of like you can work out how you're going to do this, like you can work for that. But working out stops exactly there or there. Not so much. So you need quite large areas.
Do you speak of it? You don't. You were in the building. No, can't lead up.
I'm not obviously terrible. I mean, you need to be very precise. That's just way too much how you do it. Just because it's easier to not have the options. And our application is quite slow, but considering functions benefits outweigh kind of so we usually don't know and it's almost Python's
no, they
yeah, Java is probably better. You can. Yeah.
we looked at Go now when you go
my knowledge of website.
It's a website.
Well, how can it close a website?
Yeah, but it's not when you browse it. They can, it's not.
What about that website? Well, not so massive, but I mean, it makes sense. I was finding out one book. A lot will take exactly.
But there are websites as complicated as there are websites, yeah. So it's not but to see Aaron's project, you know, Bleak is a lot slower. Well, yeah, exactly. And we're considering making
sometimes I want to
yeah, so we're thinking of making so we're just considering other options and go over as soon as we're trying to
How soon your website is
yes, that's yeah. I think there's a lot of reasons. There's lots of reasons. So we have the client, which is client, it's not linked together.
Well, the website itself is the same server, but that basically the server that's just the API is the basically, they're trying to search a table, basically,
calculation is happening too slowly. I don't know if the server should calculations too long.
The sheer size of basically the more they use it,
my initial lead are.
I think you have to use it. If you use it to run search, you might
potentially
there's only so much of that you can do. Okay, we can throw money servers and why would you make it faster? Yeah, exactly. If there's no, there is. It's just, I think if you, I think you'd have to see it. You have to see the way because we started being like we wrote the code more neatly than the API side. We can get sort it's gotten to a point where, like, in terms of papers on someone's writing candidates and they're seeing results. So basically, so it's private jets, and you pitch your location. There are asset care.
this to make it different. This one still wants to do this has stops. It has still those tests. When I say all of Europe, when I say London, it's not just grass
And the advantage, this is good for me, but it's also good for my people, because if you've got an emergency, chances are
currently you only show results it takes so long to do. Well, actually, it depends on what you use.
Doing is the so something you can depose that might just be down at Matthew Yard or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the concept.
I can either walk up or put the car down at the main store. Catherine to learn new stuff.
I'm not the expert on the back end, but up to my knowledge, there's separate words that yeah, I mean, yeah, so if you get 50 people on, yeah, so that's scenario. So in the office, we have months, and whenever you run through, you have
I always have to look up what we were actually having, because something did that
but yeah, so I'm sure
every survivor working together at home which is a journey in itself, really. To me, that's not it's always a journey. I think it's worse when we've been living and working. I think it's more challenging. Yeah, I know a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have
Oh, really? No, mine.
It's not so bad. It's about
the problem with insulting.
So turn up to one.
So you're basically saying that each asset has
Okay, so we're going to have our next one talk at the end from Leon, who's going to talk about page objects with page methods.
Yeah, that it's way more interesting than the title suggests, but I need to ask you a favour. Could you bring your chair to like there? Because otherwise I'll have to talk really loud the whole evening, and I've got some really interesting things that we'll be able to see on the screen. So you and I sort of come. I don't know. Is that too close? Is that breaking a personal barrier? That'd be really handy. Will anybody raise this man?
Like that game where you creep up behind
someone.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, he's behind you. So,
what's the time, Mr. Wolf? I've got small children, I know these things.
Cool. Right, so, yeah, my name's Leon, and I'm from a company called Level Up, just downstairs. We're a software development company, as I said before. We help people develop their software, and we also help people become better at delivering software. I'm the founder of the company, and I'm a bit mad about programming. So even though I don't get to program all the time during the day, 2 o'clock in the morning, if you look at my GitHub punch card, that's when all the programming is done. And besides developing other people's software, we develop some of our own, and this is one of the things that we write. It's an open source API. I'm going to tell you about it. It's for testing websites. So there's going to be some code in there, but I promise it's not too dry. And actually, if you can read it and you're not a programmer, then that's a good test of whether it's any good or not. So we'll wait and see. But without further ado, I'll push on. So, got a very important question to start with. Who likes Haribo? Yeah, like Haribo.
Which ones?
Yeah, well, the ones with sugar on them over and that are a bit fizzy.
Yeah, oh, the
like
tank
those,
tax, yeah, there you go.
So, right, there we go, fair enough. So here's the deal. I've got like this much Haribo, and I want it to be an interactive session. So those that have good points or questions or contribute, they get to hold the Haribo bag and eat from it until someone else comes up with a good. Okay. So yeah, if there's anything that you want to say, maybe you've got an experience. A lot of the devs here, and I don't think anybody said they're a software tester, did they? No, but everybody's had an experience probably trying to test a website or something, and so there's probably lots of interesting chat to be had. So just before we get going, has anybody heard about the object pattern? It's a chance for Haribo. Has anybody heard the page object pattern before? Okay, so no Haribo. So the page object pattern wraps a HTML page or fragment with an application-specific API, allowing you to manipulate the page elements without digging around in HTML. All that really means is if you've tested a web page before, quite often interacting with parts of that page can be difficult because there is some way buried down in the DOM, and so the code that you've written for accessing the web page ends up looking really ugly, and it's not very reusable anyway. So a lot of the things in software nowadays are about abstraction, and page objects represent your own web pages. So you can almost imagine having an object for testing every page that's in your site. Yeah. So, and there's another guy that says, if you've kind of got the APIs that you use to interact with your web page in your code, you're doing it wrong. So has anybody written any tests for a website before, and do they recognise this scenario? Right, so let me show you what, hold on. Yeah, show the example. Let me show you what that could look like. So here is, I'm going to make the font a bit larger. And a bit like pantomime, if you don't like it, you're supposed to sort of do this. And this is really ugly code, so let's have I tried my very best to make it as ugly as possible. Want some colours. Let's go. What do you reckon? If it was that big, would that be alright? Should we go bigger? A bit bigger. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah. Okay. That's really big. Probably too big. I might have to make it smaller again. So in fact, I've got this. So I'm going to make it just one notch smaller. This is what the setup time is for, isn't it? So here's a piece of code. I'm going to show you what this code is supposed to be doing. It's trying to join GitHub. So this code here, you're not supposed to be able to read it. It's a disaster as far as code is concerned. So if you can't read it, that's fine. You shouldn't be able to. But it tries to join GitHub. So the first bit of code is finding a text field that's got this label called username, and it's trying to set the username. And then, because one of the problems with websites is they have loads of Ajax on them. You know, so when you do something on the page, something might happen some point later, and the tests are not very good because they just try to pile on through. So they try to do something, but they do it too quick. So, for example, if I typed my own username in here, you can see it said, oh, that username's already taken. And so if I want to have a test that checks that the message comes up, if a username is used, it's already taken. I've kind of got to wait until the website's had a chance to check and then see if the messages come up. And so a lot of people get fed up with their test feeds because they've got loads of clever web pages that do bits asynchronously, but to test them, their tests become very brittle. So this really ugly code is trying to wait until the username is not visible anymore, and then it tries to do the next one. And if you've got a very large website, you'll end up with a lot of code like this, and then trying to get through it after the fact when it's not working becomes really difficult. So so today we're talking about page magic and the where's it gone? The page object pattern, and how we can make that a bit easier. So, background, I really like testing a lot. I'm glad there are no testers in here because I openly admit it's probably the hardest part of software development. The more complicated your system is, the harder it is to check that it's working without a person getting involved with it. And so there's a real challenge there. If your application does something clever, your tests have got to be clever as well, and it can be difficult. Because people are all after this holy grail of I push one button, all the tests run, and I can deliver it into production to users. But to get to that point is really difficult. And if the software does something complicated, then there's a real challenge there. So some people, has anybody sort of shied away from testing on the front end? Has anybody tested on the front end ever before? Well, you get Harry by, that's fine.
Yeah, another yes over here.
I have another yes over there. Who said yes?
Simon, was it you? Yeah?
Would you like to? Yes. I'm going to keep this in reserve.
See if you can finish the bag in one go.
Yeah, exactly. So pass them around. If you think you might have a good idea, that entitles you to carry those. So yeah, I'm a Java developer for my sins, but I've spent a lot of time in Ruby, and I've used a lot of APIs for testing web pages. So these are some. I won't go into them in detail. Maybe some. Does anybody recognise any of the ones on there? No. So a lot of people, if you start to try and test your website, irrespective of what language you use, you might use Ruby. A lot of companies do. Even if they use Java or C++ or whatever it is, a lot of them use Ruby just for the test suite, and they can do that because it's outside of the application, so it can be in another language. And Capybara is the one that you'll hear about a lot, and a lot of other APIs are built on top of that. So they try to sort of enrich it by, for example, building page object type DSLs out of it. So page object, Site Prism, they're widely used, they're really good. Give them a look, but look at Page Magic instead. So this is what we all want when we're writing software, you know, this perfectly ordered system, very nice, tidy code, the tests that check that it works, they run quickly, they go green all the time. If we want to change them, it's easy to change them. But very quickly we sort of end up in this situation because our software is complicated, so we write loads of complicated tests, and now there's just stuff everywhere. And some of the common problems that we suffer are that our tests are slow. Like because of this Ajax thing that I was talking about in other situations, we start to put sleeps in because, you know, if I wait long enough, hopefully whatever's supposed to happen on the web page will do, and then I can click that button, and then that replicates because you go through that button several times in different tests. They become flaky, you don't know why they're not passing. Sometimes it's because the machine they're running on is slow. For example, you've got a slow internet connection, whatever. If they're complicated, they can become really difficult to debug. And they can be difficult to understand. And there's lots of reasons, like the page object frame pattern isn't the silver bullet. There are lots of contributory reasons why tests have all those problems. Sometimes it's because you're doing too much testing through the user interface. You've got an upside down pyramid, you're testing in the wrong places. Sometimes it's because you're not using good encapsulation. There's lots of reasons why it can happen. But addressing each one of them, for example, the encapsulation of your code will bring benefit. So you spend all this time getting those bricks together, trying to make them work for you, but you just create a monster that chases you around, and at the worst times, for example, when you've got a release coming up, it just tries to bite you. So a lot of people, like developers especially, they start to get fed up with writing tests and their test suites, because they're a bit like a black hole that eat all your time and all your patience. So I don't know if anybody's ever worked anywhere where they've turned off the test suite because they can't get it to pass and they've got to deliver something by the end of the day. But that happens because people get frustrated with their test suites. But that's when stuff goes bad as well because they've turned off the test suite. So there you go. Anyway, and that makes us all really glum. We get quite upset when we're being controlled by the test that we wrote. So, Page Magic is a DSL domain-specific language, if anybody wants to know, for modelling and interacting with HTML pages. It has a GitHub page with documentation. Give it a look. I hope it's easy to use, because if it's not, I'm doing something wrong. So if someone would like to try it, that would be really good. I'd really be happy to receive the feedback. It's in Ruby. You may not write in Ruby, but actually Ruby's a really great language, and it's not difficult to learn, especially if you've got a particular goal, like testing something like a web page, for example, is not necessarily as involved as some other things. So it might be your way in. Give it a look. It's on Ruby Gen. Got 20,072 downloads. Right? I'm trying to get 1 million. So I'm thinking that if everybody in this room downloads it, I'll be up to about 20,080 or something like that. So if you could hold that, that'd be great. Yeah. That's cool. So without further ado, it's sort of time for a demo. So there's going to be code. If you can't see, I'll zoom in. If you want to get even closer, that's okay. I'm going to show you some of the distinct features of, okay, I'm going to show you what page objects look like, but I'll show you some distinct features of Page Magic, and I guess where that's different to some other APIs, I'll call it out, especially if you've not used them before. Apologise if I'm going very quickly, I wasn't going to talk very long, so we'll see where we get to. So the first thing is, it's like accessing a page. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to run this scenario where I do a search on Google. That's pretty much the simplest scenario I could think of. So if we just do that, oh yeah, I want to demo it manually first every time. So if you don't see me do that, like tell me that I haven't shown you what the test is going to do before I run it, because otherwise it might get a bit confusing. So let's do that. So the first one is literally going to go to google.com. For added danger, I'm using the internet during the middle of this presentation, so somebody knows. So, yeah.
It's like doing it with children and
animals. Yeah, exactly. So in fact, I could get one of those cats that didn't done it. So there you go. I've done a search. This is exactly what my test is going to do. It's just going to do a search for digital Croydon. That's it. So if we go back to this code, the problem with this code is it's what we call procedural code. I can't reuse it, and it's got a lot of duplication in it. So if I wanted to make it have less duplication or make it reusable, I might start to stuff it into functions or methods. And if you start to do that, that's a sign to you that you're looking for encapsulation. And maybe page object is the encapsulation you'll end up at eventually. So here I've got my thing. I've defined Google. And I've just said it's got a text field, which I'm going to give the name search term. And that funny bit that says name Q, that's how I find it on the web page. It's a field that's got a name of Q, right? So, but all the magic, so that's my reusable bit of stuff. But the bit that we really care about is this bit here, the lines 12 and 13. So, can anybody decide what lines 12 and 13 are going to do? I hope it's quite straightforward. Yeah, so it's just going to set the search term. It's going to visit Google for a start on that URL. It's going to set the search term. That's it. Yeah. So let's run it. Put in digital coordinate. That's it. Ta-da. Yeah. And so I can do that as many times as I want. No problem. So that's the first thing. It's as simple as that. A class that represents Google. That's a thing that's got its own identity. And every time I make one of these Google pages, it's going to have a field called search term that I can use. So I get to share that with people. So the next thing is page mapping. I want to do a more complicated scenario. So this time I'm going to do a search on GitHub instead. Is everybody with me? Yeah? Yeah, cool. So I want to do a search on GitHub. He's going to move. He's leaving. Right, okay, cool.
No, that's
So. Okay, so I'm going to do a search for page magic on GitHub.
Children's pickup. It's nothing to do with presentation. Don't give any.
I will tweet you to get a link because I just searched on Google for your GitHub pages and I can't find it.
No problem. Probably doesn't know what my Twitter handle is. Anyway, so that's so search for page magic, and this comes up. So a couple things have happened. I've gone to the first page, I've found the search bar, I've put something in it, I've hit return, and I've come to a second page, and there are some results. And the last bit is I just want to go and look at my project. So I've moved through 3 pages. Now the thing about most page object frameworks that you won't see is that when you move pages, you've got this awkward moment where you've got to sort of create a new page that represents the page that you've moved to. You've got to recognise that you've moved page. I've clicked on the link, I'm now on another page. Your code has to recognise that that's happened. You have to create a new page, stuff the browser into it, and then you can continue. And so a lot of tests fail because they're not on the page they expected to be on. So the next thing that Page Magic does is it does this thing called page mapping. And all I want to show just quickly is I've got 2 pages, one called search results, that represents the second page, and the first page, which I call home page. I'm up there. Doesn't matter about all the rest of the code. And then down here, I've done this bit here which says that if I'm on the URL that ends with a slash, then that must be the home page. And if I'm on a URL that ends in search, that must be the search results page. Okay? So you can see, if I go back a page, when I was on the results page, it said search up there. Yeah? So what Page Magic is going to do is it's going to seamlessly switch in the right page object, so I can just continue to interact with the website. And that's a sort of a unique feature. So I've done a few things here. I've defined a nav, and inside the nav there is a search field. And on the results page, I said there's a link for the Level Up repo. Okay, so and again, if nothing else, the bit that really matters are these 3 lines. So what do you think that's going to do? Visit the home page, set something in the search field, and then click on the link in the results. That's all it does, and that's what we're looking for in our code, because this is very reusable. It hasn't got anything to do with the web pages in it. So if your designers go and change them all, it doesn't matter. You change those just one place where the pages are defined, and then all your test route continues to work. So I'll run that now. So going to get assign modes, because I'm on a different resolution screen, it's opening up the browser some more, which is a bit annoying. Let's see if I can make it larger. boxes of widths, I think are. These are the things you can't defend against because I'm on a different size monitor, so that search field was missing. So it enters it in, clicks the link, goes through. Yeah, so that's that. So let's have a look at other things it can do. Helpers. So you can see here, I had to put this /n in. That represents hitting return on the keyboard. And so if people, when they're using the page objects, need to know that they've put these funny characters in all the time to make them do what they want, people will use them wrongly and get frustrated. So the helpers, let's have a quick look. You can see here in this nav element that I created, I've created this helper called search. And all it does is it takes the repo that you've said, PageMagick, and it puts a /n on the end for you. Yeah, so that just means that the code that looks exactly the same as before, these ones here, just means I can say search PageMagick. I don't have to have any funny stuff going on. So that's the next thing. It supports helpers. I think it's probably going to break again because it keeps going too narrow, which is annoying. Let's just do that again. So that still works, same as before. So what else can it do? Custom elements. So the thing is that there's a navigation bar on every single page, and I want to be able to use that nav bar on every page. So I can take the nav that was defined before, and I've created this thing called nav, and I've said that the home page and the search results page, they've got a nav, and I can share those things now. The definition of the nav is exactly the same as before, so we don't need to go into it. There's selector, that's how you find the nav. It's got a text field called search field. It's got this helper method that we use for searching, and then everybody gets that. So again, the code looks the same, but now I can do a search on the second. When I get to the repo, I can do another search. So what's going to happen this time is it's going to search for the repo, it's going to find it, it's going to load it. This time, it's going to search within the repo, but I've not written any extra code, so I'll try and run this. I'm going to show you what I mean. So it's going to stop because of the so search results. Now, this time, it's a different set of search results because that's what you get from GitHub when you search from within a repo. But I've not written any extra code for it, so I'm actually getting a long way now with not very much code. And the code that I do have reads really nicely, and also I'm just flowing through the site. I've not had to do anything to switch these page objects in. Does that seem useful? Download it now. Not right now, in a minute. So, next thing. Some of these things, I guess, I'll try not to whiz. I'll whiz through them. I won't labour them too much. I think people that use these kind of APIs, they'll not be used to seeing these kinds of features, which is why I'm bringing them up. So, for example, maybe I want a test that can look at the PageMagick repo that's been written by someone else. There were several results there, and maybe I want one of the others. If I hard code, it's the level up PageMagick repo all the time. That means my page object can only be used for going to one repo, which isn't very reusable at all. So I've created this thing called result, which is just like nav, and then I've been able to put it onto my search results page, but this time I can define the selector, the method for finding it, dynamically. It's not even decided at coding time, it's decided at runtime. So the organisation will be passed in and decided there, and all that really means is I can write something like this line. I want the result for level up, and this time I'm going to look at the metadata. So what on the results page, there are actually a few things. There's the link for getting into the site. There's some metadata saying it was updated 15 days ago, and then there's some other statistics over here, like it's Ruby and 2 people have followed it and all the rest of it. So if you're writing a test for a website, quite often people are going to want to check that these things are where they're supposed to be and they do what they're supposed to do. So on my page object, I wrote that all results have stats, metadata, and a repo link. And on here, I'm searching for the result that is for the Level Up organisation, and then I'm just getting hold of the metadata text. So I'm going to run this one, and all it's going to do is basically proved that it found what I wanted it to. And let's go back. Let's stop it before it goes too far. So if we look at the console, you can see down here that there were 10 results and that PageMagick was updated 15 days ago. So again, I've got a very powerful API for interacting with the GitHub site now, and you can imagine how you would start to scrape and interact with these pages just as a user does. So that's pretty useful. Two more things. So the code that I showed you earlier was really ugly and horrible. Remember that really ugly and horrible code? That is later. This is the equivalent code. So all I'm going to do here is say, this is what we get. Visit the sign up page on this URL, set the username to be lashed, that's my GitHub username, and fail if the username is taken. Yeah, so those 3 lines, that's it, and that's the equivalent to all that garbage code that was in the previous file. Yeah. That versus that, basically. So, and all I've done here is, the point is, we're talking about encapsulation, so what I've done is, I've been able to define the username field, and I'm saying, when you're interacting with the username field, watch the username note, because after I interact with it, I want you to wait until the username note has disappeared, and then life can carry on. So that means with this page object, anyone I give it to who wants to use this field, they've not got to worry about the fact that there's Ajax on the page and there's things that they have to wait for because the definition of that field has been declared to these things are important. So that's, and I've just got this special method called taken, which checks to see if there's a CSS class on it. So that just lets me write these three lines. Yeah. So again, that's pretty easy to read. If you were a tester, not even an automated tester, but you wanted to have a look, you wanted to check that the developers weren't lying to you, what code was doing, there's a good chance that you could read that and kind of guess what it was doing. Agree? Those 3 lines? Cool. So there's that one, and so I will run this one because I don't think it will need debugging. So we're going into here, putting the username. That's it. And then we get this error here, that says username is taken. So it did interpret it correctly. Right. So very last feature. This is a little bit techy. One of the reasons that people hate going through the front end sometimes is because it's slow. The act of clicking on a button and waiting for a page to load, it's a slow process, and a lot of the time people are testing at the wrong things at the wrong level. So they want to know that the username is put on the page, so they load the whole web application up, go through 5 pages to find the username to see that it's there. Well, with PageMagick, one of the other things that you can do is that you can load a page just from the raw HTML, so it doesn't even have to get it from a browser. So you can get that HTML string, your web page, push it into a PageMagick object, and then you can interact with it as if it had come out of the browser, which is really useful. So you can do all of your sort of standard testing, which just checks that the data you give to your pages appears on those pages, and not bother doing it via those long functional tests. So I'll run this one. And all I asked it to do was put out the page title and tell me what the link is for the contact us link in that page. So, and you can see that it said that the page title was Level Up, and to contact us you'd email hello@levelup.uk, and that's exactly what was in this HTML here. Had a title of Level Up and it had a href of that. Yeah. So that's actually a really powerful technique to really speed up your builds, because this is where you're going to lose most of the time. That's the end of the code. Happy about that? Did you pass the code button at all? No one asked a question, did they? That looks like it's in your bag.
I've got some questions.
Yeah. Oh, okay, fine.
First of all, how does this cope the new website for design to present different interfaces or different codes for different devices and different browsers.
Yeah.
And how does it cope with stuff that's designed to stop automated scraping?
Well, it's hard to say how it copes with those things because every defence will be different. But like I've used it on some pretty complicated websites that look different in mobile on different devices, and really it's as smart as you are. So if you can come up with the abstraction to represent the mobile version of the site versus the desktop version of the site, it's got all the tools that you need to model those different scenarios.
Because some stuff's quite clever these days, and I mean historically there was a lot of stuff that did things differently for Internet Explorer and Firefox, or between Android devices and iOS devices.
Exactly. So it doesn't have any OCR in tech in it, so it can't read that, the capture text or anything like that. It's not that clever, but it will let you get to any page, part of the page that you want to get to, and as long as you know what you're supposed to do when you get there, it will let you do it. So that's the point. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How much does it test certain elements on the page? So one of the things that straight away I was thinking of, because the websites I work with, they're all based on CMSs, and we've got like a global marketing department that's all over the world adding pages onto the CMS. And the issue that I've had, I've only been there for a couple of months now, so I'm kind of going through discussions about how to use Photoshop to properly optimise images for mobiles and stuff like this, because there's so many pages that load really, really slowly because they just, well, this is a picture, it doesn't mean it's this, doesn't matter if it's this big and it's like 5 gig, I'm just going to use that for the icon, and stuff like that. So how much can it test
It's about,
those
it's about testing the right thing at the right time. So testing behaviour and testing configuration should be done differently. And if you've got a CMS, the content that's going into that CMS should be seen as configuration.
Right.
Don't use your functional test that checks that the application does what you designed it to do. Don't use that test.
So this is more behaviour testing.
Yeah, well, it's not just for behaviour testing. You could use it for whatever you want, but I'm just saying your particular situation is that you need a checksum to stop people putting bad content in the first place.
Yeah.
So there are, depending on what it is you're testing, if it's configuration, you should checksum that configuration and call it out as a definitive test because that's what it is. If you try to, by proxy, test these things too far away, you end up having a test suite that will never finish. If you think about, like, I don't know, a newspaper website, they must have millions of articles. They can't use this test suite to do that. They could, but it would never finish running. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Okay.
Else?
What
was the reason for choosing to source it, put it on GitHub, have open source?
Just because we liked it. I mean, we thought other people would too. I work with a number of companies that are all trying to do this thing, and it's painful when you turn up and they're not there's something better that they could be using. So you're really doing yourself a favour if you can help improve the state of what's out there. It'll look for itself. So that's one of the motivations for other people to use it if they like it.
Which license is it?
Sorry?
Which license did you choose?
I'm not sure which one is this guy. It's probably got a PSD license. Sorry?
Basically, as long as it's not GPL, that's good.
Okay, fine. It's not that. So,
you know the old joke of GPL, like it's the thing that infects everything you touch if you don't put it on this LGPL or the MIT license.
I don't believe it is that. I can't remember what it's got though. It's a little while old. So there you go. That's that. Have we got a couple of minutes there? What have we got?
Have you finished your main talk?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Because I have a few questions as well.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Okay,
Okay,
so I noticed you tested the site on you tested it on sites that actually changed the address in the browser.
Yeah.
But what about JavaScript?
I'm very glad you asked. Right, there we are. So on the PageMagick repo, you can also, when you're doing your mapping, I'll use this. You can map against fragment identifiers. So if you're using hijacking and fragment identifiers, you can do that. So if you're doing an MVC JavaScript framework type application, you just do your mappings against the fragments, and that's fine. Yeah. Anything else?
I'm just wondering why you chose Ruby as opposed to JavaScript or something. Because the test suite I use, like Karma, Mocha.
No, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So like Ruby was a language we were strong in, and the test suites that we were developing at the time were using Ruby, so it made sense to start with that language. Also, Ruby is a very expressive language, so if you want to see as close to natural English as you're going to get, it's one of the languages to choose. And so for me, like, I'm a very visual learner, so I like to see as close to pictures as I can get, and that's why I thought it was a good start. But yeah, it could certainly do with being implemented in some other languages. I think it'd look a bit different if you did it, but it'd still be really good to have.
It's really sort of the common stuff, because like complex is like when I teach coding, they use Ruby. So Ruby is that like sort of base, is that like the easiest one to teach or something?
Yeah, it can be, and I think that also the Ruby community, like JavaScript community now, has put a lot of effort into getting you going quickly with certain frameworks. So if you want to see the fruits of your labour quickly, JavaScript and Ruby communities have put a lot of effort in there. So it's a good choice for letting people have feedback and celebrate success. Yeah.
Any more questions?
What's your Twitter handle?
It's coming. It's going to be on the screen now. So I've got just 2 slides left, which is this is sort of a bit of a survey, basically. If we were to do another talk, there's 2 other open source projects that we work on. I'm just interested to know if anybody would be interested in hearing about things that do something like that. So the first one's Mirage. It pretends to be things that it's not. So if you connect to external services, maybe ones that send in text messages and that costs you 10p to call it every time, or just services that you don't have access to all of the time, you can use it as a stand-in for those services, so you can still have your test suites running against something that looks like a real thing. And Site Hub, which is an intelligent HTTP proxy, so this is if you want to do something like an A/B test for argument's sake, and there are different tools for doing that, but say your test has got something seismically different in it. It's not just that you want to try a different colour for a button, but maybe the journey is drastically different. You've got 2 choices. You can host 2 versions of the app and balance between them, or you can build the logic into one application and get it to show something some of the time. And that leads to a lot of extra complexity within the same code base, and rolling one thing out in our app can be difficult. So this is a different approach to putting different versions of stuff out there. It can be configured with rules or percentages. So Site Hub, Mirage, would anybody be interested in seeing anything about these at another time? Yeah.
Really love Mirage.
Yeah.
Especially anything to do with testing.
Yeah.
In general, or what you use to plug in whilst you're trying to build complex systems.
Okay, cool.
But it's something that I come across a number of times.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. That'll be easy. Would anybody like to see Site Hub as well, or is it just the testing bit? Okay. So 2 people, we can meet up at lunchtime. Okay, cool. That's fine. Yeah. Well, if I get a chance to come back, I'll certainly try one of these. And that's it. So thanks for listening. That's the GitHub page. I don't think there's any typos in it. There's no .com. There's supposed to be .com after GitHub. You can email us at that address. I can also give you my own email address. Level Up HQ. That sounds with the handle. Thank you very much.
Small announcement that I'd like to make. We have been very lucky that Imperial College London, for one of the hats I put on, we're doing a study on music, how music affects the brain, and we're going to be doing hormone testing. If anybody would like to spend an afternoon and get paid 25 quid to just sit around and listen to music and see how it affects you, it's actually quite a big deal. We've been very lucky. We won a national award for design, and the algorithm that we built has gone over the world music collection. So this is working on Spotify and stuff like that. So it will go towards. There's a guy called Nigel Osborne, and Nigel Osborne was the head of the music school of Edinburgh. He asked us to work on this for nearly 10 years now, and it's finally come to completion. And one of the big parts about it is to prove it. And he's very lucky. He's gone down to Imperial College London and said, "Can we use some of your expensive equipment that no one ever gets to see?" And what he's really trying to prove is that there's a thing called valency, and valency is like, dislike, arousal, and counter-arousal. Like and dislike is pretty much what Echonas does and everything else. Arousal and counter-arousal is brain science, or neuroscience. And there's a lower part of the brain called heteroscleros, and apparently it's about how stimulating music is. And we get to prove it. And for some reason it's going to be in Croydon. So this is a great shout out, because we've got Imperial College London doing medical testing in Croydon, which is just utterly bizarre. We're going to put a shout out about it afterwards and saying this is going on. There's 30 participants. If you know anybody that's a music geek that would like to spend an afternoon being tested and prodded like a guinea pig, I would very much appreciate it. No, all it's going to be is a couple of slide tests. So literally look at some music, see a video, that's hopefully going to stress you out, listen to some music and see what happens. But it's been a great privilege to work on it for a decade and to get as far as we have means that you actually can, we're going to have said that we've categorised the world's music collection. The next part is to prove that I'm not an idiot. And I would really appreciate some help. So we'll put a shout out if any of you guys want it or you know anybody. I would really, really love people from Croydon to come along and be guinea pigs.
Whereabouts is it going to be?
It's going to be in tomorrow down the road because they have a wonderful music lab. It's part of the ecosystem that's really come around. I mean, if you look a year ago, we had no university involvement, and I don't know if you actually know what Sync is, but it's actually Brighton. And Brighton University, with Michael Hurd, has done an amazing job of bringing it to it. They could have gone to Central London, but they actually chose here. And at the same time, Francois chose Croydon and has part of one of the most wonderful entrepreneurial sets and actually had belief. And as a guy that's left here, went to Edinburgh University, started a company up, I've been doing design for a decade, and the only reason why I came down is my dad had terminal cancer. And he passed away, and I got this horrible thing called girlfriend, so I stayed around. So I'm basically like a minister without large, which doesn't, I have no reason to be here apart from I like being here. And watching the change and watching the people come around, you know, we are able to put this on because lovely people like phoning up and other people, me as well, put money in to just get you pizza and beer and to create a tech community. And it's starting. And to put in context how well Digital Croydon's done with Richard and Tech City Croydon's done, when I started my company in Edinburgh, there was a thing called Informatics Ventures at Edinburgh University. And it was funded. And out of it, two major unicorns that you may have heard of, FanDuel and Skyscanner, appeared. And we're seeing the same grassroots happen right here, right now. When FanDuel was two people that were next to me, and when Skyscanner was about 5 people, they both started. And the small roots of success allowed people to recruit right people, the community started to evolve. And it is happening right here, right now. So I've ended up going on a rant that I didn't mean to. But the other side is I'm really happy that we've managed to get Imperial College to work with us. I don't think if you know how big a deal that is, they're probably the top 3 in the country in science. And what I mean is that some of the stuff they do is majorly goddamn crazy. And they're going to be testing us and doing proper research. It's also with pre-market university and HCL, so we're starting to get proper engagement, and please get involved. Thank you.
What's the date and time, James?
It's going to be over August to September.
Okay.
I will write a formal email, so I'm rubbish, I'm dyslexic, and I can't write for sod. So when I get round, I will actually, once I formalise exactly where it's going to be or whatever, the shout out will go, and I would really appreciate a shout out to your friends, because it is fun. Nice to see how you actually write music and saying by science is brilliant.
Stick it in the Croydon.
In tomorrow.
In Croydon Tech Cities.
We will be announcing it. I mean, I literally got told it was happening today. So I've been in conference calls and I've actually come down from Edinburgh and spent 6 hours on the train. So please forgive me that it's not quite organised properly yet.
The other place that might be worth raising this, which is less techy, is Matthew Jar's at Hoodoo's on Tuesday.
We'll be doing all of that. We'll probably get something on Croydon Radio.
Yeah, well, Croydon Radio's down there.
Yeah.
But also on Tuesdays they've got the open mic night, and there's lots of people who aren't techie there, but it's probably a pretty good place for music.
But it's not hundreds, we just need 30. So I was sort of also asking if any of you guys wanted to set up here, and it's fun. Yeah, it's only, I mean, the tests cost like 500 quid at the time, so it's not a cheap thing to be, well, you're getting paid 25 quid, but they're actually going to spend
keep things fun, and it's strange, it's weird, and it's what makes life worth living, frankly.
Right, cool. Thank you. Well, with that, I'm going to end the event. Thank you everyone for coming to Britain. The next one will be here, August 11th at 6:30. I haven't, yeah, so that's still and if you want to help or speak at the next event or a future event, just let me know. Go to the Digital Croydon website and sign up to the newsletter. We have a Slack page, so if you want to join the Slack group, I will send links out to the newsletter, or you can just follow this link, which isn't very easy to remember. But
to put it in context on this particular point, we're looking for people that will give an hour a month up and divvy some tasks up.
Yeah, not too much time, but any help we can get will be amazing. So that's our Twitter page and our website. And now we're going to go to Porter and Saucer, which is near East Croydon Station. So
it's on the doorstep.
Yeah, which is literally 5 minutes away from here. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and I'll see you guys at the pub.
Thanks, Richard. Yes.
Did you say, hi, I'm Janet.
No, nice to meet you.
Did you say this is Sussex University?
It is. I'm just going to make sure, because we've been live streaming, so I just need to make sure it's turned off. Hang on a second. Swipe down to stop.
Anybody, so stick your hand up, and please all come if fun.
I didn't say that, because I'm an alumni.
Of Sussex? Sussex or Brighton?
Sussex.
Yeah, Sussex. Excellent.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I was there in 1968.
Amazing. That picture is the campus.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, of course it is. Yeah, well, it's probably changed a bit.
It's changing all the time.
All the bits at the back weren't there, sort of
huge.
thing. A couple of accommodation blocks just next to it.